Alright guys, Alright guys, MR.TwoSix checking back in. So today we're going to be doing an install video on Project Barbatos. So we'll be installing Swift springs. So yeah, the reason why I went with Swift is because they're more of a sporty spring compared to others. I didn't want to do full coilovers. Because coilovers, I've usually just set it once and forget it, and yeah, I didn't feel like spending the money on it either. And I wanted to keep the adjustability of the OEM shocks, so I figured just let's go with the Swift. Good brand, good reputation, and we'll go from there. So let's go ahead and take everything out of the box. I'll show you what's in the box, and then we'll get to it. All right, guys. Alright guys, so let's open it up, see what we got. Okay, so spring, more springs. These are probably the rears. This is what the size is. There we go. Yeah, these are probably the rears, just looking at them. Alright, and these are probably the fronts. This is an interesting design though. At least everything that I've found on these springs say that they're linear. But I don't know, when you see these tightly wound springs like this, actually these are the rears. Go, it says it right there. When you see these tightly wound springs like that, it kind of lends you to believe they're progressive. But everything I've seen says that they're linear. They're linear rates, and it's an interesting design because mostly when you see the tightly wound springs are up here on the top or bottom. I guess this design is what makes it linear instead of progressive, because when the spring compresses, at least the tighter wound springs are in the middle as opposed to being up top. So when it compresses more, it gets stiffer. Here it's the stiffness is all in the middle or something like that. I don't know, I'm not an engineer, but yeah, pretty cool. Alright, so let's get this all unboxed. Alright, so let's get this all unboxed and get the car up, get it ready to go, and we'll show you what's up. Alright guys, so what we're going to do right now is we're going to measure the distance. We're going to go from, instead of the center of the hub to the bottom of the fender, I'm going to do from the floor to the fender, because I'm by myself and it's kind of difficult to do these things when you're by yourself. So let's see what height we are at on the OEM springs. So in back we are at a little bit under 27, 26 and 3/4. In the front we're at 26 1/4. So those are our stock measurements. So once we get the springs on, we'll go back and remeasure and see where we are. All right guys. Damn you, Honda. Okay, God. Oh crap, did I just break the... I just cross-threaded this thing. Damn. Alright, let's see what we can do. So here we go, guys. 2 weeks have passed since I started this video. Now you're probably saying, or thinking, why have 2 weeks passed? This was a lot more complicated than I wanted it to be, than it needed it to be. But it was, so it is what it is, and what's done is done. So first, let's go with the rears. So on the back, it's easy. You have 2 bolts, that you need to remove. Now, since I went with the Swift Spec-Rs, I didn't have to remove the strut in order to cut the geez, I forgot what this thing's called, the bump stop. So I didn't have to remove the strut to get to the bump stop to cut it. At least with the Swift Spec-R springs, it's not noted in the installation instructions, and other people that have installed these springs have not done so and don't have any issues. So the rear is easy. So you're going to remove the on the sway bar end link, the lower bolt that connects to the lower control arm. You're going to take that out, and then you're going to want to take out the lower strut bolt, which is 17 millimeter. Now, in dealing with that, you're going to want to use something small. So if you have a ratcheting wrench, that would be ideal, because the thing is that there's not a lot of space between the bolt and the actual spring. So once you start backing it out, the ratchet will start moving into the spring. So that's why you need something that's thin that can get in there. You can use a regular wrench, but you're going to be there forever taking that thing out. So if you have a ratcheting wrench, I recommend that. And remember, it's 17 millimeter. So that's easy. Take that off. If you're heavy enough like me, I weigh 240 pounds, which is not good for my size. Or if you're strong enough, you could do it by yourself. So once you have the strut out, you're just pushing down on the rear, that hub assembly. You're just pushing down on it and then pulling the spring out at the same time, and then getting it in is the same thing. You're gonna push down on that rear hub assembly and wiggle the new spring in. And if you need somebody else, you can have somebody just use their put their foot on the rear hub to push down that hub assembly, and then makes it a lot easier to get it in and out. So that's the rears. That was a piece of cake. That took me 20 minutes. Now the fronts were a freaking nightmare. This design is terrible. I don't know why Honda did this design. So let's take a look, and I have a spare that I'll show you guys later. So here's the shock, or the strut, and the spring, right? So most McPherson strut designs that I've seen, the Fiesta, almost every other one, will have a flange right here on the shock where 2 bolts go in and it's held into a knuckle, right? Not so with the Hondas. What Honda did is that the strut actually sits inside the knuckle. So it's and really it's only in there by weight, because then you have a bolt in the back here that actually clamps down the sides of the knuckle to tighten it down. So, and believe it or not, the strut goes in pretty deep. I mean, I would say, let me see if I can show it here. I mean, the strut is all the way down here. So from here to here, 3.5 inches, 4 inches. So this is the bottom of the strut, and this is where it slides into the knuckle. This is where the knuckle starts. So that's about 3 inches, 3.5 inches. And it sucks. The design is terrible. And maybe Honda made it this way to make it difficult for people to do stuff with their cars. I have no idea. The design just sucks. So enough of me complaining. So the reason why I wanted to do this part of the video is because nobody explains what's actually going on when you're doing this. The first two videos that you see when you look on YouTube, you'll see people just they'll be yanking on the hub front to back, you know, and they're just shaking it and doing all this stuff, and yeah, because I did it two different ways. So on the other side I did it like that. I was doing that, you know, moving it around, trying to get the space where the strut will clear the knuckle, and it was a pain in the ass. But what people don't tell you is what's actually happening is that some point of the drive shaft, I don't know if it's the part that connects to the transmission, or maybe there's a joint in between, has to come out in order for the knuckle to give you clearance to clear the strut, because you'll be limited to the lower control arm. The lower control arm will hit against the bottom here, or actually on the other side, will hit against the frame or subframe down here. So you're limited to how much space you have. So so there's two different ways to do this. You could do the yanking around, like the first two videos on YouTube show you. You know, yank it back and forth, blah, blah, blah. And then eventually the drive shaft comes out enough from the transmission that it gives enough clearance. That coming out allows the knuckle to bend, come out, and gives you a different angle, which allows the strut to completely come out of the knuckle. And from there you go. So how do I know that the drive shaft is disconnecting at some point, whether from the transmission or in between? Is because this car is a limited slip diff. You can independently turn one side from the other. So I can, when I did the install, I turned one side while the other wheel wasn't moving. So that's how I know. And then you can also tell because when you pull it out, the boot on the axle, on the drive shaft, is stretched. So you have to be careful that you don't rip the boot or twist it in any way. You want to get it back to normal, because if you rip the boot, you're gonna have to replace that whole thing. So then putting it back in was the reverse. You know, you have to get the strut in, get it into the knuckle. And then again, you see people wiggling it, doing the same thing they were doing to take it out. They're doing the same thing to put it in. What you really have to do is just grab the drive shaft at its medius point, which is closer towards the center of the car, and you're gonna twist it, and at the same time you're twisting, you're putting a little bit of force in towards the car so it can go in. Once it goes in, you'll see that the knuckle will set in place in its OEM location, and then you can go ahead and tighten everything down, and you're good to go. The other way, so that's the way I did the passenger side. On the driver's side, what I ended up doing was different. I went further down in the video chain on YouTube. I saw one guy, which the way he did it makes sense, without having to do all this yanking around and you know, possibly destroying the drive shaft boot or anything like that. So in the other videos, they talk about removing the 3 bolts on the bottom, but they don't do anything with that. So in essence, if you want to do the yanking, the jerking off method, you don't need to remove the 3 bolts that hold the lower control arm to the knuckle. You don't have to do that. Now, the other way I did it was with those 3 bolts removed that hold the control arm to the knuckle, the lower control arm to the knuckle. We wedged in. We had some pry bars and 2x4. We wedged in right here, pry bar and a 2x4 to push the lower control arm down from the knuckle. So what that did was separate the lower control arm from the 3 bolts, or that it's really a pivot point, because there's let me see if I can show it here. I don't know if you guys can see it there. Trying to get the angle. That pivot point, right? That's a ball joint. Then you have the 3 bolts on there. So that this actually moves. This pivots. It's a ball joint. So you get your pry bars in there, excuse me. Your pry bars in there. You separate the lower control arm from the knuckle. But keep in mind, the same thing's gonna happen. The same thing. So the drive shaft is still gonna have to pop out. You're just not banging it around and you know, doing something where you might break something else. So in separating the lower control arm from the knuckle on the bottom, you are basically just making it easier, because what you're gonna do is gonna do that, and as as you separate the lower control arm, the knuckle will have a tendency to come out, so it'll pivot out, and that motion will pull the drive shaft out from where it is, and then the knuckle will just drop down because it's no longer suspended by the lower control arm. So it'll drop down, and then you'll have more than enough space to clear the strut. So reassembly is the same. You're gonna have to pick this up, the hub up. You're gonna have to get the drive shaft in, because once you get it in, this pushes the bottom part of the hub assembly in towards the car, which will line up the holes for the that ball joint, that lower ball joint, onto the lower control arm. Okay, so that was how you put everything back together, and you're good to go. Here's where I messed up. So like I said, the rears took me 20 minutes. That was a piece of cake. The fronts, oh my god, the passenger side probably took me 4 hours trying to figure out what was going on, and then this side probably took me about 2 or 3. It was an all-day project when it didn't need to be. In my Fiesta, I was able to swap coilovers in and out within an hour. It was no problem. But this, I mean, it was a freaking nightmare. So so what ended up happening, this was the last side that I had to do. So I was frustrated, I was pissed off, and I just wanted to be done with it. Well, guess what happened? I messed something up. So what ended up happening was, I got everything back together, lined up, and this bolt, which is a pinch bolt, because remember, it's just pinching the 2 sides of this flange together. Excuse me. So in my haste, I just took an impact gun and I cranked that thing down as far as it could go. I just wanted to be done with this project and move on with my life and be happy. So in doing that, I cross-threaded it. I cross-threaded the knuckle, not the bolt, which, if you think about it, I mean, I guess, well, because the impact gun heated up the metal, which caused it to deform, but the knuckle is steel. So I ended up cross-threading the knuckle. I thought it was the bolt, so I ordered 2 more bolts, just to have a spare. Actually, I went through 3. So I was hoping it was only the bolt, which was $3 or $1 something from Honda. OEM parts, all OEM parts. So I ended up messing up the first bolt. So the next day I went to the Honda dealership, got 2 more bolts and a knuckle, because I found out that it was the knuckle that was messed up. So that was fun. So I tried again, and no, it wasn't the bolt, it was the knuckle. So next thing was to take this whole front hub assembly apart so I can replace the knuckle. So I'm working on it. I got everything out. As far as I have the shock out, the brakes are to the side. I'm starting to work on removing the steering rack, this control arm for the steering rack, or steering arm, I don't know what that's called. And so I come here and I'm trying to take off this nut, which is a 36 millimeter, by the way, if anybody wants to know. This nut right here is 36 millimeter. So that was 2 trips to AutoZone to rent some parts, and I couldn't get it off.
So at this point, I was like, F it. I'm just gonna pay somebody to do this, because this is way above my skills, and I'm no mechanic. I'm just a schmuck, so that likes to do stuff to his cars. So put everything back together, and had the tow truck come in the next day. Got it towed to my mechanic. Luckily I had the parts, most of the parts, because I had an extra bolt and I had the knuckle. But inside the knuckle, also here where the drive shaft goes on the back end of it, there's a wheel bearing. So I didn't have that, so they ordered that. They got it same day. All in all, it was $350 to replace the knuckle, and then it was $100 for that wheel bearing. So what a pain in the butt, let me tell you. Let me show you the other knuckle, the old one, so you guys can see what it is that I'm talking about. All right, so here we have the old knuckle, right? So here's the old knuckle, right? Here's the old knuckle. This is where the steering arm connects to, the brake caliper connects to here, these 2 points, and then this is where the hub, the drive shaft comes through. This bearing, well, this whole thing is what was the extra that needed to be ordered, because I didn't have that. When you get the knuckle from Honda, it just comes, it's the knuckle itself. It doesn't include the bearings on the inside. So that had to be ordered, and I got that ordered. So what ended up happening is back here. Let me see if we can get a nice little shot. Back here, this is where that pinch bolt goes through. I ended up cross threading, you can see a little bit, all the way through the bolt. And with the impact wrench, it's spinning at a high rate. It's heating up the metal, causing it to deform, and that's why it created that cross thread. Because this thing is steel, so I mean, it's pretty heavy. It's freaking cast steel. But yeah, so that's the mission that I went through for springs. All this for freaking springs. What a pain in the butt. One of the reasons I got the Honda is because people taught how easy they are to work on. Baloney is what I say to that. Because it shouldn't be that hard to swap out a set of springs or to remove the strut, really. It's way too complicated. So, with that said, after 2 weeks, or a week and a half really, of the car just sitting, finally got it fixed. I love it. The springs are awesome. The Swift Spec-R springs, I couldn't ask for more. It drops the car down about 1 inch, which is what I wanted. I don't want to go too low because I autocross the car and I plan on tracking it, so I wanted something that was more performance oriented and instead of just looks. So I got that out of it, and the car is super flat through the turns, and it's not too bouncy, which I love. So go over and raise speed bumps. It's very composed. You won't break your back. But I love the springs. I do love the springs. So we'll do a driving video in a little bit, and I'll show you. I mean, it's just I love the springs. If you're gonna get springs and you want something, you want just a better tracking car, or a better composed car, I recommend the Swift Spec-R springs. So yeah, let's get it on the road, and you'll guys see what's up. Yeah, for sure. All right, guys, I wanted to show you the kind of drop we're looking at. We're looking at from the floor to the bottom of the fender. So Again, it was about an inch of a drop, so we're at 25, a little bit under 3/4. So in the front, in the back, we're looking at 26 3/4. It's from the floor. So yeah, so you guys can see about what height your car will be at basically after installing the springs. And I've been driving the car around for a week already, so it should have more than settled by now, so I'm not too worried about that. But yeah, it helped fill up the gap nicely. Keep in mind, these are the wheels that come with the car, the OEM SI wheels, which are 18 by 8s, I believe. So yeah, so definitely the next thing on the docket is rims and tires. So we'll see you guys next time. Peace.